Michelle Marie McGrath.
Welcome to Unclassified Woman, and today I'm delighted to be talking to Nicole Graham. Nicole is an Aussie expat now living in Hong Kong. She grew up in Sydney, lived in Melbourne and Darwin before relocating to the business hub of Asia. Nicole has reinvented her career over the past 25 years, from business administration to corporate learning and development to multi-passionate entrepreneur. She studied a range of healing modalities, co-authored 2 guided writing journals, goddessjournals.com, and has blogged personally and for business. As a certified online business manager, Nicole leads a team of dedicated and experienced business specialists who are passionate about supporting service-based solopreneurs to succeed in their businesses. Her business, Bahunia Solutions, sits between your traditional virtual assistant and the role of an OBM. Choosing to live a child-free lifestyle has allowed Nicole the opportunity to travel extensively with and without her husband. And I found this a really fascinating conversation because Nicole and I talked about some of the cultural aspects that are involved with living in Hong Kong and the situation with China, which again just brings a completely different level and other nuances to it. So it was really interesting. Hope you enjoy. Well, so great to have you here today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Michelle. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And so just to give us some context, Nicole, would you mind sharing a bit about whether you've not had a child due to personal choice or through circumstances?
Sure. I actually have chosen not to have children. It was a decision that I made around 28. And my husband has been quite happy just to sort of go with it and be happy not to actually have children himself. He'd never thought about it until he'd met me, and I was quite adamant. And so we made the decision together not to have children.
Wow. And so you came to that conclusion around age 28 now. Was that something that you decided gradually? Were there a number of different reasons for that, or was it just something that you'd never felt particularly strongly about?
I think it had been, up until then, I always just thought I'd do what everybody else did and what was sort of expected. I actually thought I'd have children. I always thought I'd had probably 2 children. And then I read an article in I can't remember if it was like Marie Claire or Elle, or it was something, one of those, fashion sort of modern magazines. And they talked about the situation in China where there were so many baby girls being abandoned, left on the streets, left in orphanages, left in churches, and also the baby situation in India where baby girls were being killed because they're not boys. And they had horrific photos, and it just sort of woke me up to, wow, there's all these babies being born around the world that are not wanted because they're not boys. And it just sort of got me questioning whether I really wanted to have children. Did I want to bring a child into the world with everything that's going on? So I sat with it for a while, and I just, let it just sort of, I wasn't in a relationship, not that I was getting too old to have children. It was just sort of something that I thought, going forward, I need to know what I want, because if I meet somebody and they want children, there's no point in continuing a relationship if we've got 2 different, thought processes on having children. So over time, I then realized that actually I don't want to procreate. I actually don't want to physically have a child. And I also made the choice at that point, if I ever did feel like I wanted a child, I'd actually adopt.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of where I how I came to it. I had not really expected to ever feel this way, but it was something that once I realized that I had a choice in making that decision for myself, I really just sort of dug deep and said, what do I want? Is it really what I want?
Yeah. And it's just so important. And you bring a really interesting perspective in there because obviously you're based in Hong Kong, and what you're saying there about the Chinese situation, I mean, is just unimaginable
Yeah.
for us Westerners who don't kind of experience that sort of thing every day, where you can't imagine baby girls being abandoned or killed and all that because of because they're the wrong sex. I mean, it just seems it's so hard to grasp, really.
Yeah. 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 And it's very sad. And it's due to the one child policy
Yeah.
and that boys are revered because they can provide for families and get better jobs and all of those sorts of things. So I would imagine that it's changing a little bit. This was 20 years ago that I first read this article. But it just had that impact that it woke me up to think that there's all these children out there that are being born, are not wanted, and they deserve loving families.
What is the adoption situation like in China and Hong Kong? I mean, is it a very difficult process?
I believe from China, it's a lengthy process, and in Hong Kong, it's a little bit different. There are a couple of orphanages that actually help people adopt, and generally the children go overseas, particularly children with special needs. However, you can adopt, and I do know a couple of people that have adopted in Hong Kong, and they've adopted mixed race children. A number of different cultures here that from Filipino to Indonesian, Indian. So there's a whole and then there's the Western and Chinese nationalities, and so there is a common problem where a young girl that might have fallen pregnant here, her family don't know back home. They've come from the Philippines or the Indonesia or a sort of more of a third world country, and puts the baby up for adoption because she can't take it home because she's unmarried.
And so she'd be disowned by her family.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
So hard, isn't it? Very sad.
Yes. So it's quite a different dynamic here as opposed to what we would see if in Australia and possibly other Western countries. Yeah.
Of course. And so did you ever feel any pressures from your family or your own friends and peer groups about having a child? Did anyone ever try to persuade you to change your mind?
I've not had. My family have been great, and my husband's family have been great, which I think was a little bit surprising at first. I thought people would be a little bit, oh, what? You're not having children. So our immediate family has been great. A couple of my friends were like, why would you not have children? And they were a little bit more concerned or surprised because they hadn't really thought about it themselves. And a lot of them were very maternal, really wanted to have children. And I have cats. So I'm a bit of a crazy cat lady. So girlfriends would say to me years ago, but you're so good with your animals.
It's not really the same thing, but
you'd be a great mum. And I'm just like, yeah, but I can go away on holidays and I can leave a cat behind. I can't do that with a child.
Yeah, but you're obviously using those nurturing qualities with your pets. Absolutely.
Yes. But it's apples and oranges, really. So there was a bit of shock within my girlfriends initially when we said that, and there was one of my husband's godmothers, she had a bit of a conversation before we got married, saying that she thought I was being very unfair for making my husband choose to have children or not have children, and that by me marrying him, I was actually doing a disservice to him because he's going to be a great father, and I've made him choose. And I was quite clear with her that I never made him choose. I was really upfront early on in the relationship. We've been together for 4 years, so it's not like it's come out of the blue that I don't want to have children. And it's his choice. And he had never thought about having a choice either. So me saying this is what I don't want to have children, made him think about whether he really wanted to have children or not. And every now and then we still touch base. So
which is good.
We actually check in with each other. You're sure you're still happy not to have children? And we when we went into getting married, we agreed that we'll just play it by ear. If something, if one of us really got the yearning to have a child, we'd talk about it. But we also agreed that we would actually adopt and we wouldn't have a natural child. So every now and then we check in, and we're both still feeling the same way. We don't want to have children. Now I'm 46, so I don't think I'd be able to have a child. But we would still go down the path if it was really something.
Yeah, that you felt that yearning for.
But we don't. So that was the one person out of the family that was really adamant. She really was feeling like I was making him make that choice. And she felt that I shouldn't be marrying him. But that was the only person.
Yeah. So, well, that's good. That's great that your family was so supportive and kind of understanding and grown up about it. Because often people can feel very pressured by their family projecting those desires and beliefs onto them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think part of it, our family's quite, well, my side of the family is quite, there's adoption throughout the family. Right. So I think part of it might have stemmed from that, the family have grown up knowing that other family members have not been able to have children and have had to go down the route of adopting. So I think there's been a bit more openness about the way a family can be created. Well, it's not just about having a child.
No, I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes and formations these days, don't they?
Yes.
We're very mixed.
Yeah. So I think that helped with, that when I said, I'm not going to have children, I think that helped the family sort of was already really open to different ways families can be made up and they don't have to consist of children.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's great that you and your husband check in and you've got that communication channel open, because really that's all you can do. And some people do change their mind. And also I've heard of people that thought they'd always have kids and always wanted that. And then when they really questioned their motivations for that and went into it very deeply, thought, actually, I don't think I do. I just assumed that's what I would do, and now I realise that it doesn't actually fit into all of the other things that I'd like to create in my life and my values. So it's such an individual thing. It's not really anyone else's business to pass judgment. So nobody else knows what's right for you.
No, that's true. And I've had women on planes, older women on planes, ask, having that conversation. You sit next to someone and you might say hi and have a bit of a chat. And being older, they've said, do you have kids? And it's like, no. Oh, when do you plan to have kids? I don't plan to have children. And you're having this conversation with these strangers.
Yeah.
And then they're starting to say things like, oh, but I think you'll regret this, dear.
How do they know you're a complete stranger?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's amazing how many times, and they are much older. They've
Yeah,
probably got grandchildren, so I understand that it's a
a
different
generational thing as well.
generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't let it offend me.
I got married very young, and from that time onwards, I was constantly being asked
Mm,
about when I was going to have a child. She had 7 children. It's quite funny to have those conversations and go, well, I don't actually feel that I'm missing out because I don't feel a
mm.
strong enough yearning to make that happen. And if I'm not feeling it strongly enough, then I don't think that's right.
No, that's right. And I have a firm belief that if I don't have the strong yearning, will I be a good mother?
Yeah, yeah,
And what's the point in bringing a child into the world if I'm going to be resentful or not want to give time to to raising the child?
yeah,
And there's a whole range of things that you have to take into consideration.
of
Um,
course.
and I do see that people don't necessarily always take that into consideration.
No, no. I mean, it's actually very responsible to be
Mm,
so conscious about it and for you and your reasoning for that.
mm. I did get a lot of couple comments of, "Do you think you're being selfish?" And my response usually was, "Well, am I being selfish? Would I be selfish if I decide to bring a child into the world and then be resentful
Mm,
or or not wanting to be part of the child's life or treating the child in a completely different way than it should be?" I said, I think that it's more responsible than being selfish.
And hilariously, the majority of people, if you asked them, why are you having a child, they would say, because I want one. Well, there's nothing more selfish than that. So, I mean, that's the irony of it is that when people have children, it's generally for personal reasons
Yes.
because that's an
Yeah.
experience that they want to have.
Want. Yeah, exactly.
So, again, it's like really turning these assumptions on their head, but it's just what we're
Mm,
so conditioned to. And so, I mean, there are so many of those generalizations and stereotypes and myths in relation to the whole topic because we are a pronatal society. It's
yeah.
what we're used to, and it's so ingrained and embedded that it's unconscious in most
Hmm.
people, the majority of the time because they're just not used to having these sorts of conversations, which is why it's
No.
really important to bring this much more out into the open so that people don't feel unnecessarily guilty or ashamed if it's not the right thing for them and their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And also,
Yep.
it's a financial consideration as well. Let's not
Hmm.
forget. I mean, it's also a huge outlay.
Yeah.
That's the
Definitely.
practicality.
Definitely. And that's something that my husband and I were just away on the weekend. He took me away for our 10th anniversary as a sort of a surprise. And, it was he really treated me, and we went and did some spa things. And in general conversation, we both said, if we had children, we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
So we have traveled extensively and we still travel, and every second year we plan a big holiday somewhere that we've never been. And we actually recognize that if we did have children, the money that we're using to go on travels and experience things in different parts of the world would be going to school fees,
Yeah.
would be going to clothing the children, and our life would be completely different if we had children. And every now and then we stop and we acknowledge that we're not sacrificing, but we acknowledge that it would be different if we did have children,
Yeah.
and that we can see how, and we can appreciate what other people are giving up
Yes. Yeah.
to have children, and that's their decision. But our lifestyle, we wanted something different.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's completely valid and that's
Mm,
absolutely your choice.
mm,
And so, yeah, I mean, it's amazing all these different assumptions that we can experience and be faced with. And so, obviously one of the phrases that we hear a lot is how wanting to be a mother is natural. And so then if you don't feel that urge, then are you unnatural? So are there any of those that you've experienced or encountered?
I've not actually had that conversation with anybody
Yeah.
about having the feelings of natural. It's been the comments of, well, you naturally nurture your animals. I think you'd be a great mum. And it's sort of me discussing that, just because I love them this way doesn't mean I'd love the children this way. um, and that, so there's been no unnatural, no comments about being unnatural. More, I find the comments that I've had has been around, well, who's going to look after you when you're old?
See, there's another stereotype. I mean,
like
assuming that you're going to live on your child's doorstep in your old age. I mean, I'm on the other side of the world to my mother. So, I mean, and we're much more global citizens these days. And so
exactly.
that there's no guarantee of that. And again, that's a very selfish reason, isn't it? That you're expecting your kids to look after you. Even if you've got a good relationship, it doesn't mean that they're even going to be in a position to do that, depending on what's going on with their life, or even the desire to do that.
Exactly. Yes. So that's been an eye-opener in that sense.
Yeah, ridiculous. If they actually thought about that before they said it, they'd realise how it just doesn't really make a lot of sense, actually.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I have found, not so much now, but probably about 5 years ago, if people asked me the question of, do you have children? And I said, I would just say no. Then, and I never went into, oh no, I've just had
trying to justify your reasons.
I just say no. Yeah. I would get the pity look.
Oh, you poor thing. You obviously can't.
Yeah. And then I'd feel like I'd have to explain myself.
Yeah.
So the conversations have been quite different in the sense of having that, it's a natural thing to be a mother. It's been more either the pity conversation or the who's going to look after you conversation. And part of it, I think, is cultural. Living in Hong Kong, the children actually do look after the grandparents.
Yeah, true.
It's a cultural aspect here compared to possibly Western world where there's other resources that you've got. Particularly here in Hong Kong, there's not a great deal of consideration for the older people. And, the pensions aren't great. And
so the families are expected to look after them. There is that cultural difference there. So, yeah, I guess, look, it's more understandable if people are making the comments in Hong Kong like that.
Here in Hong Kong, the grandparents are there to support their children, and they will look after the children and make sure the kids are off to school and picked up after school. The grandparents, because they're not working, and the parents are actually off working long hours, full-time work, and they generally all, live together.
Interesting to see how young women in Hong Kong will be dealing with this topic over the coming years.
Yes. As people become more aware that they do have a choice, they'll start to think about all of the other additional responsibilities that come, particularly in this region.
It's not the role of every woman to be a mother.
No.
Even if you're biologically able to, it doesn't mean that every woman can or should play that role. So we've all got different gifts and abilities. And so what advice would you give to somebody in Hong Kong, because that's where you are and in that region, who is considering creating a different path of meaning, because they do have all of that additional cultural weight and expectation there?
I would just be suggesting that, they sit with the decision first before they tell people. And particularly when you've got to sort of let your family know. Like, I felt like I should tell my family that I'm not having children. And I would imagine that they would just have support, have other people around them that will support them for that, for their decisions, and their decision is their own decision and there's no pressure. So being able to have that additional support there will actually help them deal with the common myths and common expectations of being a woman and having a child.
Yeah, and I can imagine that they would be met with quite a lot of resistance from such conservative.
Yeah. By having that support there, it makes it easier to move forward and make different choices. And there's a lot of other ways that people can get involved in working with children if they wanted to, or doing that nurturing if there's the desire to being a nurturer, but not needing to necessarily have the children themselves. So there's different ways of fulfilling your life.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be fulfilling your life with children.
Yeah. And obviously meaning and purpose, it's so individual to all of us. And, many of us find that through our work as well. And so obviously having a child is one way of expressing our creative energy and life force. So how would you feel that you explore your creativity?
Well, I tend to, I draw mandalas.
Oh, beautiful.
And I do a bit of mixed media art. And I also help out with animal organizations.
Yeah.
So that's sort of more the creative aspect for me.
Yeah.
I do a bit of design stuff within my work. And, for me, I'm very passionate about what I do and my own business.
Yeah.
So I find that's a creative outlet. And just coming back to the nurturing aspect is that I get to nurture my clients.
Yes.
I get to nurture my team. I've worked in orphanages where I've been able to spend time with children, particularly with children or young adults that have been with special needs, and being able to help them develop themselves and learn new things. And that actually brings me more joy than thinking about being a mother.
Yeah. And so, well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. And so would you like to share with us a little bit about your work and the best place to find you online?
Oh, okay. So I have a sort of a virtual assistant team, an outsourcing firm. So what we do is support small businesses with their administration and marketing. And we just work with solopreneurs, so one-man bands, in the service-based industry. So my website is bahiniasolutions.com. So that's Bahinia, BAUHINIA, solutions.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then I'm guessing then that your clients are worldwide.
Yes. Mostly based in Hong Kong, but we do have some in America and Canada and Australia.
Oh, well, great. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for your time today. Really interesting hearing your perspective and obviously the situation in Hong Kong as well, which is obviously unique to that region too. I mean, It's just fascinating, all the different aspects to this topic.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Michelle. It's been really interesting to listen to your podcast and listen to all the other women that are going down the same path.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. There's an amazing community of women. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.